Değerli konuklar, kısa bir aranın ardından tekrar hoş geldiniz. Welcome back. Printed circuit board production and localization of its production. I would like to invite Teoman Şahin to the floor. Hi, my name is Teoman Şahin, Technological Cooperation Management Director in Roketsan. In 2024 and 2025, we conducted Field MBA program. Along with the sixth period of it, we did a final project. Emre Bey explained his own. While doing the final project, we had a consultant professor, Uğur Tarçın, and he advised us to be imaginative. And back then, in Roketsan and in other companies in the defense industry, I detected a missing point, missing item. I worked on the modeling of the printed circuit board. This is a vision. This is my imagination. I tried to create a vision. SAHA Istanbul Electronic Clustering Committee, they're also working on this topic. And there are some other efforts by other institutions. It is based on creating supply chains, international supply chains. The real purpose here is to localize the printed circuit board. We would like to produce them within our country, and we would like to localize the supply chain with all its components. The numbers change every year. We are spending a great deal of FX for that because we are importing all the boards from other countries, so we need to save our foreign exchange. It will have a huge contribution from financial perspective. PCB architecture or R&D wise, we are in a good position, but in terms of manufacturability, we have some issues. The companies from the Far East and the companies from Europe, manufacturable PCB is shown by them, and if we can make this investment real, we need to prepare manufacturable PCBs. It requires power, intense amount of power. You have to consume lots of water. If we can do it locally with proper automated systems, it will also contribute to our sustainability in terms of environment. This project, the vision I have in this project is that not only in the defense industry, but also in durable goods, in the consumer electronics, there are many companies making designs, and after we receive the board from abroad, then they prepare they put the other components on the board in Turkey. We would like to produce this board in Turkey as well. These are electronic cards that you see, the rigid. We are familiar with that. In many electronic devices at home, we have this board. In the defense industry, all types, rigid flex and flex, we use them. And recently, we have been using HDI, high density interconnect. There are lots of pads, via endpoints. You put them on the processor boards, and the signals are quite intensive, and it is hard to manufacture it. As you know, you know, there are numerous of these boards in the products that you see in the fair. In defense industry, there are 2,000 plus electronic boards. This is a rough number. And there are other systems, sub-systems, sub-integrators, etc. This production, it's not easy. Here we are talking about electronic board. Here we are talking about electronic circuit and connection. All the engineering departments are interrelated within this process. Chemistry engineering is of great importance. This is the manufacturing process of a board, especially a rigid board. When you make it flex, for example, a different infrastructure is required. The PCB layout, PCB Gerber data that we design at different layers. Right now in defense industry, 80% of them have between 6 to 18 layers, and some reach up to 24 or 32 layers. But at the end of the day, we have lots of boards with um, lots of layers. We need to work on the artwork. We need to bring them together on the same line, then pressing them. There are many challenges within the manufacturing process. So it is very intensive. It has to be controlled in the utmost fashion. So it's a small space, and it makes the process even more difficult. But this is the rough process and the steps of the process. So we are discussing whether we can produce it in Turkey. The challenge and the needs, there are lots of challenges. I put a couple of them. We don't have a trustworthy supply chain. As Roketsan, we have RS Pacific company, sourcing company from the Far East. In China, in South Korea, we paid visit to 40 companies to understand how they manufacture it. What we have observed is that it is difficult to find a trustworthy supply chain because we are exerting great effort here to design the product, but when it comes there, there are link breakage in the supply chain. A presentation was made before me. He mentioned about the attacks, and we are trying to protect our data as well. So trusted supply chain is of great importance for us. And the companies we work together are supporting us from distance, and their time difference issues, language barrier, etc. And they don't show, they're not transparent. There are some companies which are not transparent in the Far East. You arrange the PCB and you do it layer by layer, and you notice the issues, only when you start to use. Then, it is very important to find to establish a trusted supply chain. There are different companies around, so it's a little bit risky because you don't notice the issue till you start using it. And we have various products within Roketsan. We have challenging conditions because they're working in difficult conditions. Okay, long supply periods, there is China, festival, they have different vacation, the calendars don't match, so it takes too much of time to supply the products, and we don't have control over the manufacturers. That's another issue. And all defense industry products are not serving for the national military, Turkish military forces. Many ally and friend companies are asking for our products, but then end user documents, certificates, we need to provide it, but the manufacturers from the Far East, they are asking, which country are you going to sell it? And that's a problematic issue. Most importantly, as defense industry, we give a warranty of 10 years, for example, to Turkish military forces, and during the lifespan of the product, the least traceability is on the PCB side. Our own production, our own integration, our own test, or all other mechanical parts production with the local manufacturers, PCB is our blockage area, and we are suffering from it. And other companies then have issues while preparing the board once they receive it. So I mentioned about the language barrier, the time difference, etc., and our needs. We have lots of needs, to be honest. We need Class 2 and Class 3 manufacturing infrastructure for rigid cards, for flex rigid cards, for flex cards. We need an infrastructure for it, and after we produce it, we need to be able to test it. And as I showed you in the process schema, we need to be able to test it during the process, and the final tests have to be very functional. We have to have such an infrastructure. As I said earlier, it has to be both Class 2 and Class 3, maybe Class 2 then Class 3 production line. This is what we have to have in our country. Technical data packages protection is also of great importance, especially the RF cards. The frequency, design, manufacturing, you can see it very clearly. RF signals and their frequencies and the frequency distances, not everybody should know about them. Data protection is also a need for us. And last but not least, the changes which are going to be made on the design. There are many technical challenges. We make a design and then we go to the company for it to be manufactured, but then manufacturer tells us that it's not manufacturable. But another company tells us that it is okay to manufacture. So they give us different feedback, but then we noticed it was producible. In between two layers, we wanted to create a capacitive space. They cancelled it, but we wanted to create such a space, capacitive space. If we had had local producer, we could have had that discussion in a more confident manner, and there will be a space for development and betterment as well. Yes, we are experienced, but we can even go further. And this is my solution offer. The whole electronic industry in Turkey, they should set up a consortium. This is my dream, because this is not an easy investment. There are more than companies. If we can set up a consortium, the foundation companies or big companies, the electronic companies, if they can come together and set up a technical consortium, then with a company to be selected, in joint venture model, they can cooperate, and this cooperation would be very beneficial to us because as far as we can understand, it requires experience, it requires automation, it requires the facilities to test, it requires qualified personnel. There are some companies doing it. Aselsan, for example, has a line, production line, they can produce to some extent. Aselsan is the best location from technical and local perspective, but they can only cover 5% of the industry. It depends, but at the end of the day, they are growing very seriously. The numbers, the figures are increasing. And in the field, with the friend ally companies, the demand is increasing for our products. So it's a fact that we need local production. Once we have it, especially at technological readiness level, we will increase our performance as well. Technical details. Board, this printed circuit board is produced in full automation by the companies abroad. All the processes are automated and it is quite fast. It's autonomous. There are automatic ground vehicle everywhere in the factories producing these boards. In smaller companies, some parts of the process are handled manually, but the rest is still automated. So we need to be making the whole factory automated. That's the way to go because it's going to be faster, it's going to be of better quality. We started this, research in 2023. The land and the main infrastructure, the building, except for them, $80 million is required for equipment investment. Till 2030, this is the rough number, of course. I mentioned about the roadmap. If the whole industry can come together, then printed circuit consortium can be established and we will partner it with a global company, joint venture, then we will localize it fully. That is the main goal. There are some similar examples.
We have seen a lot of companies in Europe and they are decreasing in number, but we also noticed that what we try to have right now, there are some partnerships that we are working on. 5 PCB producers, including Aselsan, they are doing the two-layer versions, and there are big efforts going into this. But when we look at Europe as well, there were a lot of factories and companies that were working on this, but they are now not being able to keep up their work. And Germany, England, France, Italy, etc. They had two very good PCB manufacturers, but they are not competing now against China, but they are supported by the state, and we have zero right now. And in France, there was a company that we looked into. They have really high costs, but when you look at the picture at the end of the day, they get the support from the state and they remain standing. And France, for example, no matter what, whether it's financially not feasible, etc., they want to keep the two PCB factories they have, and the private companies, they either shut down or went to China, etc. Similarly, in Italy, Italian companies as well. So when we look at the situation right now, we have, yes, some things, but not the companies that have that capability, that has that competency level. Maybe you don't need to get into the competition with these countries in that sense. You know, we have seen an example of this. Maybe tomorrow, sometimes when we cannot provide from there, from other countries, then we cannot do the PCB here. And because of the USA-Iran war, the Hormuz Strait closed down, and now our supply chain or the supply system has fallen. So electronic cards and high technology missiles, jets, etc. If we keep this model, then we might again face similar problems in the future. And like I said before, the money will not go outside to other countries, and it will remain in the country. And maybe we can sell to European market, and also we can bring in exchange into our own country. And also there is another issue that I want to touch upon. Before PCB research, we experienced a component crisis in 2021-22, right after the pandemic. And in any kind of crisis, we don't want to face the same component crisis again, you know, because of the financial or any other political crisis in the world, because we are really affected immediately, and the component manufacturers and sellers in the world, it was a great picture for them, you know. They want to experience a similar thing, you know, because our crisis was an opportunity for them. So that's why we need to manufacture our own chips, our own components. And PCB is a little bit less developed compared to component. Component is a really small part, so manufacturing and the design are at the level of nanometers, so 10 nanometers components we are using right now, so it is difficult to produce them as well. So that's why we will gain that experience and the competency for creating wafers, manufacturing wafers, and also pressing the smallest cards together, etc. These things we will become competent in that sense. And when we went to Korea, for example, we have seen 160, 180 layer PCBs, and they were for testing components. And when we look at the 180 layer PCBs or cards, we don't have that in Turkey, because it's really important, because in the future when we want to test components, we will need those. So we are at the beginning level, so I think this will lead the way to, I mean, open the way for these things as well, for defense, for automotive industry, and for electronics industry. It will be beneficial. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation. If you have any questions, I will gladly answer them. Thank you. Thank you very much. You have the figures, I believe. Yes. I mean, in 2024, $1.27 billion of export came from Germany, and also a huge part comes from China, etc. And England, again in 2024, similar figure. China, $180 million, etc. But when we look at the geography, we are in an interesting point, and in every workshop we are talking about this topic. So national competency, or just looking at, we don't want to send anything to the Far East. Yes, that's a nice way to put it. But of course, we don't want to send everything to Europe as well. $40 million of export in 2024 was the figures for our country. So those are striking figures. I mean, yeah, what I wanted to say was similar to that. So